Hello, this is Dover from DarthHater.com, and we're here at PAX East 2011, and I'm here with
Paul Hood, senior writer on Star Wars: The Old Republic.
And senior writer, you've worked on a lot of stuff with the game, obviously. Specifically, we see Tarl 5 today, and you wrote Tarl 5, is that correct?
I did write Tarl 5.
And also, what other main facets of the game did you work on, writing-wise?
I am the primary writer on the Jedi Knight class, and I was co-writer of the Smuggler class.
So we just got done talking with Daniel Erickson, and he mentioned a lot about the multiplayer story, and then also how there's divergent paths within the Flashpoint. Can you talk a little bit about how the story works in regards to the Flashpoint in general, and then also those divergent paths and how the story affects those offshoots?
Sure. Whenever we're designing a story for the game, whether it's meant for a class or if it's meant to be played multiplayer, one of our primary goals is to always make sure that it's interactive, that players have meaningful choices that they get to make in the course of the story, so that their experience is not exactly the same as the experience of other people who have played that same content. We want it to feel different and to feel unique, and to give players the ability to personalize that story to their own needs.
So on the divergent path story parts, if you're going to a part that's not necessary for completing it, is that just filling in the blanks about Tarl 5 in this example, or is it brand new stuff, or does it add, what's the benefit of getting the story parts of the offshoots?
Let's rephrase this a little bit. The story parts of the offshoots, you know, all of the content that we create for the game, we want it to be meaningful. We want you to feel like, wow, I am so glad that I played through that content, that it added so much to the experience. So we want people to explore, we want people to find all the nooks and crannies in the game and discover all of the story that's available to them.
That's awesome. So one thing that we saw during the Jedi Immersion Day is that whenever you're going through and you pick a dialogue option for a certain, all the different classes in a multiplayer group point, depending on who wins the role, they get their own response that's unique, and then the NPCs will also have specific responses on occasion that reflect to who spoke to them. What are some of the difficulties, or what was the process like to create so many divergent paths of writing that have to converge back to a single point to continue the conversation?
Writing for multiplayer is extremely complex. It's a very difficult task because you have to keep track of multiple player voices. You have to think about, the Jedi Knight is not going to say the same thing that the smuggler would say, or that the trooper would say, or that the consular would say. They're all going to have different ways of trying to advance a conversation and different ways of approaching NPCs, and we want to make sure that the NPCs respond in kind to how they're being spoken to by the players. And a lot of the fun that comes from playing through multiplayer conversations in our game is when everybody sits there and tries to vote, and one person's like, nope, we're going to say this, you know, sort of thing, and we're like, no, you know, sort of deal. And it's just a lot of fun, you know, being able to sort of compete to drive the direction of the conversation, and to kind of seize the spotlight. And if you think about the movies, that's what happens. You know, when you get Luke and Han and Leia and Chewie all together, they all sort of compete with each other to sort of direct the flow of where things are going, and they sort of yell at each other and things like that. We want to recreate that experience in the multiplayer content for our game.
Now, we heard as far back as the very first video, documentary number 3, I guess, where it showed actual gameplay of the Black Talon walkthrough. We saw that bringing specific classes with you might let you do certain things in regards to the environment. Is there anything about the conversations on who you bring with you that might open up a different, beyond just a conversation path for that little bit, open up a later conversation path or open up a certain gameplay divergence or anything like that?
We're always trying to make sure that players have a meaningful impact on the story and feel like they drove the content in a direction that they might not have otherwise seen if they hadn't, you know, been the one who won that role, you know, to advance the conversation. So yes, we're always trying to make sure that players get that feeling of, I'm the one who made that happen.
And so that one of the parts about that we saw during Jedi Immersion Day is that there's a lot of options to come in, but it kind of clicks through really fast to keep the action going. So ideally, with the same 4 classes, you could run through an instance multiple times and experience relatively different combat or dialogue options depending on who wins the role. So, you know, a Jedi, consular, a knight, a smuggler, and a trooper go through, but the trooper wins first roll than the Jedi does. And so it could keep people from moving that story along on repeat playthroughs.
I don't understand your question. Can you rephrase it?
It's just a lot of people have been talking about the repeating of
Right.
of playing through and skipping story on repetitive playthroughs. But if the dialogue options are there, would that encourage people to listen to the story?
Right. Yes, absolutely. I mean, part of the thing is we don't want people to skip through the content when they're playing it for the second or third or fourth or fifth time. We want them to keep exploring conversation paths through there and discovering new things, because there are new little Easter eggs that are in there depending on who wins the role. It's going to feel like a different experience. The worst game design that we could have is, well, the first time you played it, all right, now you don't need to worry about the conversation anymore. No, it's exciting, and that's why we add choices and interactivity to it, is because we're trying to make sure that players want to replay that content and want to experience it again. And to have people compete, it's like, last time I totally wanted to say this and the group didn't let me, I'm totally saying it this time.
That's awesome. So since you worked on the Smuggler and the
Jedi Knight.
The Jedi Knight, writing a Flashpoint for the Republic side specifically, seems you've already got a lot of experience in the voice for each one of them. Is it difficult to come up with the dialogue options for the other classes if you get so focused on one, or does the team just kind of come together to make sure they all keep the same voice all the way through?
Right, so whenever I'm sitting down to write dialogue for any class, whether it's an Imperial class or a Republic class, I've played all of the classes. I know what the voices of those characters are supposed to sound like, and absolutely, I always make sure that I don't deviate from what's been established. I want that character to sound like that character that you're playing the rest of the time in the game.
That's fantastic. We've got a lot of stuff we're focusing on multiplayer right here. In regards to focusing on single player, the stories that you've written for the Jedi Knight and the Smuggler, is there anything about writing for Star Wars, and specifically for the Old Republic, that is unique, special, or different as opposed to just writing general narrative? Is there something about the history about it or anything special you'd like to tell fans of Star Wars that are coming into the Old Republic and playing these classes?
Well, the great thing about writing for Star Wars is that everything is huge. The stakes are always the highest that they could be. The characters are big and vibrant and exciting and feel special and unique. And that's regardless if we're talking about the player classes or the NPCs that they meet. It's always larger than life, and it's a tremendous amount of fun to write that kind of dialogue.
That's awesome. I know there's a lot of people out there that are really looking forward to getting their hands on it and playing the game. Do you have currently, we always ask all the developers here, a favorite class or a class you're playing now, or who do you plan on playing when release comes out and all the fans are in the world with you?
I can't choose between my babies. The Jedi Knight and the Smuggler are both fantastic classes. It's going to be hard to pick between them. If you want to be sarcastic, Smuggler's the way to go. But Jedi Knight's going to have some pretty great moments too.
That is very cool. Thank you very much for spending the time to talk to us.
All right,
Can't wait to play the game.